Hey up, people. Welcome back to the Earth Sea Love podcast, and I'm so excited to be talking with a fellow Yorkshire lass today. Bring it. Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Earth Sea Love podcast. This podcast is for and about women of colour and our relationship with nature. Hosted by me, Sheree Mack. The Earth Sea Love podcast is committed to exploring the experiences of women of colour with Mother Nature. We want to provide spaces where the hidden voices in the environmental and conservation conversations can explore their relationship with the natural world. Inspired by our time spent outdoors, we amplify the voices of women of colour, our stories, our conversations, interviews, photography, writing, and artwork. We'll be exploring our legacies, histories, and memories which have had an influence and effect upon how we perceive ourselves within the natural world and within the environmental and climate justice movements. Welcome to the Earth Sea Love podcast. The Earth Sea Love podcast has been made possible by the funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund. Thank you. Good morning, and it's Sheree Mack here, your host, and I hope you're keeping well. I've just come back from the school run, and it's Thursday, and this episode is going out on Friday. I don't know. Is it the 19th of November? Oh my gosh, this month is going so fast. And as it's Thursday, I've been in the sea twice this week. I was going to get in today, but there's so much of a wind chill factor. And I just knew that when I got out, the wind would hurt my teeth because I've been getting out and grinning, like, oh my God, you just did that, Sheree, it's bitter cold. And I've been grinning. And if there's a wind, it actually hurts my teeth. Do you have that effect as well with your teeth? Anyhow, so I came straight back home, got cozy, and I thought, let me get this recorded as the intro for our next episode, which is again one of those specially commissioned episodes in conjunction with Northumberland National Park's Future Landscapes Festival. And as I say, oh my gosh, this is the second to last one of the series, and it's just been going so fast. Call me biased, call me having invested interest, but I've been so excited and I've been so enjoying these conversations when they happened, and then listening them back and they're edited and then releasing them, and it gives me so much joy to share them. So thank you for being here and returning to the Earth Sea Love podcast and listening to these vital and wonderful conversations. And as I've mentioned, I've got in a wonderful woman, Dalbinder Kular from Sheffield. She goes by Dal. Well, I call her Dal, and I just feel like Dal has been in my life forever. She is such an amazing woman, and it's you can probably tell when you listen to this this episode. I am all over the place. I'm telling you, I'm just so excited, and I keep throwing all these different things at Dal, like 3-point questions, quotes, and it's a case of like, she brung it. She responded in kind and awesome, and it's such a wonderful conversation. So Dal is known for using writing for therapeutic means. She explores identity, belonging, nature, trauma, grief. Masters in science, I think it's in science, and it was reading Dal's dissertation, which is called Wild Ink, and it's about using zines therapeutic way, creating them, sharing them, and how you can actually express and explore those hidden depths within us where there is that grief and that's trauma and there's that messiness, but to produce a zine out of that is transformational, definitely. So we talk about Dal's process in creating this zine, and we also talk about getting out there in nature and how Dal works really, really hard with women of colour to marry that connection between our bodies and the landscape out there, and does it in creative ways as well. And she gives a lot back to the community. So yeah, so this is an episode which I hope you will enjoy, because I definitely enjoy creating it. And yeah, there's so much joy within it, even though we touch upon difficult, issues and subjects. I mean, when don't we? When we're, bringing out the Sea Love podcast? But I think what we illustrate is that, we still do suffer, but we're on this healing journey, and what we're doing is sharing our stories on this journey to inspire others, to change the narrative, but also, to just uplift us and say, hey, we're here, we're doing this, and we are amazing. So sit back or not, walk out, do other things, but make sure you're listening to this episode of the Sea Love podcast. Thanks for being here. Bye for now. Social media has been a lifeline and has been really, really good for me in building myself back up from a really dire traumatic situation. But it's a case of like, sometimes I don't like myself when I'm on there, I want to have that energy and channel it into something that's good and wholesome. We're talking about celebrating me and my travels, but I just want to say, I was so excited about talking to you today. And I was thinking, why is that the case? And I know why. It's because when we've interacted in the past, you have been the facilitator holding space for me and my writing and other people's writing. And I thought, today I get to hold space for you to shine in all your awesomeness. So like, I was just like so excited for that, because it's a case of like, we hear from Dal today, you know what I mean? It's like, you can bring your whole self to the table if you want to, by the way.
I feel like taking all my clothes off and just like performing naked. That would bring my whole self. Yeah. It's really, I find it really, well, let's see what happens. I find it really weird when the spotlight's on me. I mean, I know I'm facilitating, but I don't kind of see like I'm in the spotlight. Yeah. But just, this is kind of an interesting experience for me.
I get you. No, I totally get you, because you're actually, when you're facilitating, you're in a role.
and you know what your role is and you've got your plan. But when you have to show up as yourself, whatever that may be, that is scary. But also, I think it's exciting, because I do feel like in these conversations, when we do show up by ourselves, we actually learn something about ourselves, you know? And I think that's a beautiful process. Myself. Talking about shining, I usually start off, right, saying where you're coming from, where you're calling in from, and if you can see any nature outside your window. Now I can see the sun coming in. It's lovely light. It is.
It's not a disco ball. It is actually the sun. So I'm in Sheffield, South Yorkshire, and when I look out of my window, so I live in the in a city, in a terrace house, sort of in a very built up area, and so when I look out of my window, the first thing I see now is the sunlight coming through the window. So it's a beautiful, bright, and gorgeous, crisp day today. And I am being illuminated by this sunlight, this dazzle. Yeah,
I love it. It's as you know, I love this time of year, autumn. I so enjoyed your workshop that you were doing around autumn, and you played September, Earth, Wind and Fire, our true nature. And I think because you've just been on my radar, and I feel really bad about that you haven't been in my life before now, but like only in the last few months, I would say maybe like from the summer, July until now, and that's a short period, but it feels like you've been in my life for a long, long time, as if you've been a permanent fixture, and that's a good thing, right?
I've been following you around dressed as a Highland cow for the last years.
Oh, well, I do think those Highland cows are so cute, so that I probably would have turned around and says, hello, you beauty, hello. But yeah, so it was through looking on Eventbrite. That's what I was doing a lot, lockdown and coming out. What can I do virtually? What can I do to feed my creative pot? What are my interests? And it was nature, identity, belonging, grief and trauma. And I saw that we had these true nature workshops, and it was by Dalbinder Kular. And I thought, who is this woman? So I went to your website, and it's like, I felt that I'd come home. I really did, honestly. And, you know, I subscribed to your field notes, and it's opened up your library, and I've read Wild Ink. Now, Wild Ink, for those who are listening, is the dissertation from your Masters of Science, isn't it? In creative writing for therapeutic purposes. And Wild Ink, and it was just like, it just spoke to me. It just really spoke to me. So like, let's just discovering the language of the wild. That's the zine again, because that's another thing. I'm into zines. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm all over the place. Right, come back. I sometimes say, what do you do? Because you've got loads of titles, you've got loads of fingers in different pots. But I like to think about it as, what do you be? What do you be when you are? You know, when you are doing these different things, like your core, what is it that you, as you define yourself or put yourself out into the world?
That is such a huge question. I don't think anybody's asked it me like that before. What do I be? Well, I suppose I be an Imagineer. Mm-hmm. So I work a lot with from my imagination. What do I be? I be a seer, I be a delver into what's in my bones. I think that's what a lot of my dissertation was about, that kind of, I was having a knocking in my bones, which I believe to be an ancestor. So I was kind of transcribing from them, I think. So I think I'd be a transcriber. I do feel when I'm in the flow of writing, I'm channeling. When I was writing Wild Ink, and then the writing that I've been doing this year, I was definitely feeling somebody saying, you've got to write this, you've got to write it. And it was, you know, somebody who's been mentoring me said, you can say to the ancestors, slow down, be quiet. But this ancestor, I mean, I have no rational cognitive I don't know who they are. It's just a feeling in a sense. As soon as I started writing the stuff around my mum, they have it's kind of like, yeah, you're doing the work now. I'll stop haunting you as loudly. So I'm a transcriber. I see myself as transcribing a bit of that work. I'd be a rememberer, a scribe really for the stories that I'm working on at the moment, in terms of my mum who passed away in March. I'd be a wanderer, a nature loafer. It takes me about 5 times longer than anybody else to walk anywhere because I'm just stopping, staring, feeling a leaf, getting my binoculars out. Yeah, I'd be a writer. I'd be a poet. It's a long list of IBs. That's a great way of looking at it. But I think I'd be at home in myself because for a long time I was other things. I wasn't these things. Well, I was these things, but they were very, very buried and very, very hidden. So my past life, I was a social worker for over 20 years.
That's so rich and beautiful. And I have this thing about labels, you know, especially when other people are quite quick and easy to put them upon us. And that's why I think it's really, really important that we define ourselves, but not to put us into boxes. I think that's a way of actually expanding ourselves, and like all those things that you just said, a transcriber, rememberer, and like that knocking in your bones of you needed to write this stuff that you have been writing, the dissertation, and now your stuff about your mum. I am sorry, you know, that she did pass this year. I am sorry about that because I am a person who has lost her own mother, and it is such a ripping of your being, basically.
Yeah.
And there's so many emotions that come out of that wound. And again, that's something that you explore with grief, and it's something that grief is with us constantly, and it's not something that we try to get through. I think it's a case of like, it's about trying to live with it, keep on living with it, keep going, moving forward, but knowing that that is going to be there, and not denying it, and not, you know, because people do say about grief, it's like, get over it, man, you know, like, come on, move on, chin up, you know, what's done is done. She had a good innings. That's not shit. You know what I mean?
It doesn't make any difference how long somebody's lived. It's still, they've gone. Yeah. In that full sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that just keeping on your wild ink, because it says about in there, it's you're studying how writing can be used in therapy to heal, and how the writing, but then also you have zine-making. Now, this appeals to me. I mean, I love zines because, you know, it's about those marginalized voices that are actually putting out what they want to say. But what's also good for me is that mixed media and collage, that mixing with the word and the image. Can you just talk about that process maybe that you went through? Because you went through this dissertation in July. Well, you submitted it in July 2020. So it was actually through lockdown that you were doing all the excavation and also listening to that person saying you've got to be writing this stuff, you know? So let's talk about that process, because it must have been difficult, but also revelationary.
Yeah, it was revelationary, and it was very difficult. The actual writing of the dissertation happened through lockdown. I was writing about racialized teenage trauma and impact on creativity, and through the George Floyd Black Lives Matters uprising. So that was very, very close. And also one of my closest friends was, we didn't know how close she was to dying at that point. So it was a really difficult process. It was like a real pressure cooker of 6 weeks of actually writing up the dissertation. The zine, I decided, I woke up one day and decided I'm going to make a zine as my research method. And that's it. I just woke up and I knew. Then all of a sudden it was Bradford Zine Fair. This is back in 2019 and Sheffield Zine Fair. And I went along and I thought, this is absolutely what I'm going to do. This is the democratization of writing. This is raw truth. This is real stories, relatable. I just loved it. And at that, initially I thought I was going to be doing like a prose only zine. But when I realized I was going to talk about creativity, identity, and wildness, I thought I was being really niche and narrow, but then you think about those 3 massive areas. I realized that there was aspects of my story that I just couldn't tell in prose only. I didn't have language. I didn't have words. I didn't know how to access the words, the language, the memories. They were so buried. I didn't even know, what I would access. So I think I saw a performance by a poet called, Louise Walwine. I can't remember how to say her second name. And she'd written, I might have even got her name wrong, but she'd written a book called Glue, which was a poetry book, and she'd mixed in reports and historical documents. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, okay, I'm going to put in my school reports, and I'm going to mash up documents. And I loved collage as well. I've not done loads of it. And I thought, I'm going to do a mixed media zine. This is how I can tell my story. And the first part of the zine was written. I was going off to Gran Canaria for the summer, my last holiday abroad actually, for the winter Christmas holiday. And for 3 nights, I just sat in front of my iPad and I just did free flow writing. And I think I generated about 4,000 words. And it was I just allowed anything to tumble out, but thinking about the subject of my zine. And that was just a real eye-opening process. What came out there was just really surprised and shocked me. And then I went home to Sheffield. So I'd set myself for my research method, given myself 7 days to create this. And I split those 7 days. And when I came home to Sheffield, I spent 4 days just creating and putting the zine together. So physically mocking it up. I'm very, very analog. So I was cutting, pasting, creating the pages and assembling it. And I went really intuitively with the process. Just went really intuitively with the process in terms of when I read through what I'd written, there was very little editing of the original words. There was some, but very little. I just cut out the bits that resonated, and started to put the words in an order, and then started to match the images that I wanted to go with the words that kind of deepened the meaning. But I also wanted to encode meaning, because I knew that this was going to be a public document. But this was a document that was, I was primarily using for myself as exploration, as an active healing. So some of it, it was meaning for me. So even now people won't know, some people won't know what it means exactly. So that's how it was created. And I used folds as well, and rips and tears. They all became meaningful. Every part of the process had some kind of meaning, some kind of, deeper layers. And I kept a process journal alongside creating it, because obviously I was researching my own process. And then I put it on the mantelpiece. I wrapped it up ceremonially, put it on the mantelpiece next to pictures of ancestors, and left it there for 3 weeks and got on with life and forgot about it. That was part of the process. And then I went back to it and opened it up, and I was like, oh my God, what have I created here? I described it in the dissertation as a Masala mix firework that just went boom in my life, because it just uncovered so many things that I kind of knew were there, but I'd not seen them on paper. I'd not seen them visually or in writing. I kind of that transcribing again, taking something from out of the mind or out of the experience or out of the ethers and putting it, into something visible, was enormous, and still is. I'm still gathering and working with the sparks from that.
My brain's sparking now, because you've been talking about the process of creating it, and then you've got the process of watching yourself in that process with your process journal, and then you've got that process of coming back to it after it was on the mantelpiece and what it gleans and brings up there. And for me, I've been in writer in residence at Northumberland National Park, and I've been working with the idea of layers, or whatever, the idea of layers, and layers that are laid down in the landscape, but the layers that are laid down in us, but then also those layers of meaning that can be gleaned through those different steps in the process. And I think, and what also, when you said about those tears and those folds, for me, the idea of fragments and how you were doing that cutting, and these are just fragments of the whole. And the thing is, we'll never know the whole. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think that is so, so rich. And it's almost like this well or pool that we can keep diving into and pulling out another fragment and laying it down and like looking at it from all angles and gaining meaning from it. It's such, oh my gosh, the creative process is such a magical thing. And to actually get those moments when we can have, like, hold it up to the light and turn it round a little bit and learn a little bit more about it, I just think is, just a gift. It's
a gift. It's invaluable. It is absolutely invaluable. And I think that I agree with everything you've said. And I think if you've got we've got complex histories, complicated by migration, complicated by, I'm Punjabi Sikh heritage, complicated by colonialism and patriarchy. And how can I tell my multi-layered, complex story just through words? I just didn't feel, at that point, I didn't feel I could. I needed more languages. I needed more range to enable me to do that. Yeah. And it's so accessible. That's the other thing. It's so accessible when we think about writing and language in a much wider context than just words, than just English literature or whatever. Yeah, in this country,
and it's fixed up. So we're educated or socialized into thinking about the words and the language and the power of it. But that's actually just a confine and a construct to control us. Once we know that there's more to it, then it's empowering for us. And of course, we're not supposed to be empowered, thinking independent people, critical, questioning people. No, not at all. You mentioned about your history. Again, I'm layering things here. Right, okay. Muddy your van, right?
My brown van, Sheree. Yes. My brown van.
Your brown van. I know. I'm loving brown. I embrace the brown, yes. But you were on your travels just recently to a residency, to an island. But what you also was doing when you came back in your field notes, the one about maps, how you actually mapped yourself while you were there or while you were on this, because I know, right, and it's so spoke to me, when I go off for solitude, I get there, there's all this planning, all this excitement. Yeah. You rearrange stuff to do it. And I get there and I think, what the fuck am I doing? I question myself and I doubt myself and I think, what the hell's happening here? And I forget myself or forget why I'm doing this. And I'm just flounder. And I think, well, I should be doing stuff. I've got this time, but I'm wasting it. What the hell? And you created that map for you to be there, in a sense, to situate yourself there and be there. And why I'm talking about this is because when I also think about our heritage, or yours in particular, which is with the partitioning of Britain's India. Yes, Britain's India in 1947. What we've got there are like this whole host of maps. And it's almost as if like when they were thinking of the partition, it was, well, they weren't really thinking about the people on the ground and and what their lives were. So what I'm trying to get to is like, I've got this really good quote from Leah Penniman, the author, activist, Farming for Black People, that one. And I'm going to say the quote because I think it really feeds into what you're doing when you're going back to nature or back to the land. Yeah. So the quote is, many of our people have confused the oppression that took place on land with the land itself. There's a lot of ancestral, almost cellular trauma that's associated with land. Now, of course, she's talking about the African-American context in that, but I think it also applies to us as British, and you're British Punjabi, I'm British Afro-Caribbean, there's that relationship with the land that we've got the trauma, and And it has been in the way of having that connection to the land. So I want us to talk about your connection with the land and how you situate with yourself with the land, with maps, with creativity, with your ancestral heritage. That was a long-winded stuff, but you know what I'm saying? It's such a rich thing, you know. It's like,
I think I'm going to have to take notes about what you said. So what did you say? Ancestral.
Right. Well, first of all, let's talk about your maps and being and that residency. And is it only me that questions myself when I do these things? It's like,
no, not at all. And I think as creatives and as writers, when we go off to, you know, in our vans or vehicles or on public transport to somewhere to go, you know, go away and write, and we get there, you know, I'm often like, oh, all right, okay, what do I do now? And you know, and often I just want to go for an ice cream and go doing lots of walking, and then I start to feel guilty because I've not written anything. So I've kind of got a lot better of taking the pressure off me and just, you know, allowing, you know, whatever to emerge. And with this writing residency, remit was to be and see what emerged. But it's so hard just to be. When I didn't even know if I'd get there, because I was very low in July after my mum passing and everything, and but I did get there. And I took I made myself like an A4 journal, and I don't know why I did A4, and I thought, right, I'm going to fill this entire journal whilst I'm on Bardsey, Ynys Enlli. It's a little island off North Wales. It's the island of 20,000 saints. So it's been a very special place for many, many centuries, probably thousands of years, where people used to go over or by boat and they wanted to die there. So that's a place people went to die. That's why it's called the island of 20,000 saints. So I realized that a really good way to work with a big journal was to write really big letters really quickly. My letters just got bigger as well, like one word on a page. Anyway, so when I was there for the first 2 days, I was like really restless and tired. And it's this tiny little island off the sea. I can't remember how small it is, maybe 1 mile by a couple of miles, with a lighthouse and loads of seals. After a day or two, I just suddenly decided, you know, I'm going to make a map. I just really want to make a map. And I had no idea what it would turn into. And so I'm going to show you the map that I ended up making. Yeah. So I just put loads of pages together, and I just drew an outline of this is the most artistic thing I've ever done in my life, I have to say. Well, I suppose it depends what you define as art, but I just started drawing the outline, and it was really grounding and painting and that kind of just allowing myself to be there. And over the course of the week, every day I just spent time building onto the map and writing onto the map my experience really of the island. And I guess it resonated with creating the zine as well. So some of that experience from working with the zine, of working intuitively and allowing things to evolve and grow as they want to. So the map just really evolved organically, and it became quite a healing process. And somebody said to me, you know, you needed to make that map to locate yourself on the island. But I think it was about locating myself in the place that I was in my life at that point. You know, deeply, still am, you know, like you say, grief never is always with us, just deeply grieving and just connecting with the nature and the landscape. I'm looking at the map now as I speak and reminding myself the goals and the dreams and just remembering who I was. So that the map making was really interesting. Map journaling, I've called it. It was just a really interesting process. I want to do it again. And I, like you were saying about the maps of, the maps of partition and the maps of our, the landscapes of home, the landscapes of here, the map of maybe even the room I'm sitting in. I think maps are a really valuable way of kind of, again, it's that visual representation of what's going on in our mind and getting all those different interconnections. Yeah.
It's also about taking back power or reclaiming not just our heritage, but our place in the world now. Because if you think map makers, they had the power to name things. You know, these people that went there and discovered it and then made the map. It's like a case like as if it wasn't in existence before they found it there. It just feed into that partition having the belief that they have a right to displace millions of people, and then actually not take responsibility for the violence, the disruption, and the death of millions of people, which was, it's blood on their hands, but not to acknowledge that, and how that actually flowed into the land, literally and metaphorically. And so like now we have Pakistan, we have India, and we have those years of distrust between them. And this is where white people have come in and just destroyed Black and brown people's lives, and it just repeated again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah, you've just really made me think about, just following on from what you're saying about, I never connected making that map to like claiming my space on the land. This is my space, this is my moment on this space. But actually that's what part of it was, I am here because you were there. That classic line.
That classic line, but it's true.
Yeah, it is true. But yeah, so map making, wow, we need to do more map making, Sheree. We need to like redo all the maps.
Yeah. We do. At the moment, we've got the coalition for COP26. It's happening, COP26 happening in Glasgow, and we've got the People's Assembly that's going on, and it's all about, Black, brown, Indigenous knowledge around nature and connection, and how these voices should be part of the conversation when we're thinking about the climate crisis. And that is action there of rewriting or claiming space that, hey, this has been affecting us for decades, and now it's happening on your Western shores. You might be paying attention or wanting to do something. We've been talking about this for decades. Now, can you listen to us? No, actually, not can. We're demanding that you listen to us. Yeah. And that is reclaiming our space, reclaiming our right to belong on this earth. Yeah. And that, that's the big, but if we come back to the local is, okay, where we're living, but the local is actually our bodies, ourselves. And that individual reclaiming of our birthright, to have that connection with nature. And because I've got that connection with it, that means I've got a voice to actually speak up for nature, because we're speaking up for ourselves in that process.
Yes. Beautifully put, Sheree. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We're speaking up for nature. And it is absolutely, it is part of us. I think about my ancestry. My mum and dad were both farmers, came from farming community, and for hundreds and hundreds of years, my family have been farmers from rural Punjab with incredible wisdom and knowledge, and about herbs and plants and spaces and astrology and all that sort of stuff. So that's there. It's all in the body. People talk about ancestral trauma. I've talked about ancestral trauma, but I also talk a lot about ancestral gifts, ancestral knowledge. That's all there inside us. And it does connect, for me, it does translate to the connection with landscape and open spaces here. Because until, my parents migrated here and had me here, my bones, my DNA was embedded in green space. In beautiful, wide, open landscapes, not with huge buildings and everything like that. So I don't know. I think that's what possibly I tap into when I'm out in big outdoor space. That need. It goes beyond just, I want to go out to the countryside. I need to be there. Yeah, I absolutely need to be there, because if I'm not, I just go a bit crazy. I know by the time I finish work to the day job tomorrow afternoon, I'm ready to be out there and to kind of like recalibrate my cells with greenery, big wide open spaces.
So but was it part of your upbringing?
Sorry?
Was it part of your upbringing as your childhood, this connection with nature?
No, not really. So I was recently just writing about my dad taking me to a place called Red Myers Reservoir, which is on the outskirts of Sheffield. So we grew up right in the middle of the city, like a 5-minute walk from town, big main road, surrounded by big hospitals.
Oh my God. You just described my childhood.
Yeah. So
in Bradford.
Oh, right. Okay. I've lived in Bradford. I love Bradford. Yeah. and a big hospital generator in the background. So that's where we grew up. But in the back garden, we had a big tree, which was opposite my bedroom window, which I always used to think was going to fall down in the wind and squash my window and me. And then my dad used to feed the birds chapatis. So he was always feeding the birds. And then I just remember little things like Dad found a little hedgehog in the garden with a yogurt carton stuck on it. And so he called us all out of the house to look at it. But we had parks. I was very lucky to have parks nearby. And I don't remember spending lots of time in the parks, but certainly did have that green space. But back to Red Mire's Reservoir, when I was tiny, and I think my dad probably only took me a handful of times. I used to just I was the youngest of 4, and I just wanted to follow my dad everywhere. And he used to take me, we called it the Barney, which means water, and he used to take me to the Barney and used to lift me up. And I just remember looking out over this like big reservoir, and I remember being really struck by it, and I know I used to ask him to take me up to the Barney, and that's where I go each year to remember my dad's passing day, the day he flew off to the big sky. And then when I was about, I think I was 10 and 11, there were 2 school trips which I think were really formative. One was a youth hosteling trip to Llangollen in Wales, and I haven't got much memory of that except running down a hill and crashing into the school teacher. And then the second trip was to Ilam Youth Hostel in Derbyshire. And I loved birds. I loved bird watching. I loved being in the countryside. I loved that immersion. And so they were really special trips. And other than that, we had our summer holidays were one day a year, day trip to Cleethorpes. So invariably it rained. We spent most of that time, we weren't allowed to go anywhere near the sea. I mean, the sea's really far out at Cleethorpes anyway, but we weren't allowed to go anywhere near the sea because my parents were they weren't from coastal areas. They were very landlocked where they are in the Punjab. So we spent all our time on slot machines. So I suppose that was my that was my childhood exposure to the outdoors. And when I got into my teenage years, I met somebody who took me out to the countryside a lot, in my brother's car. Actually, I used to borrow my brother's car and keep hold of it for days, and now it's a bit of a rascal. We used to go all over, and in totally inappropriate footwear, like stiletto heels. I remember going through Edale once. I was probably hungover. So yeah, and then it just grew. I did an outward bound course in my early 20s and loved that. That was up in the Lake District. And I guess the key moment for me was when I was at university. I got involved with a group of Black and Asian women. This was in the late 90s. There was a woman, she still is around, incredible force of nature, Pammy Jo Hal, up in Scotland. And she really pioneered outdoor education for Black and Asian people way back, going back to the 90s, and still is, to the best of my knowledge. And she was just incredible. And I was part of a scheme that she ran, and we were going to Scotland and Wales and dragging us up hills, making sure we looked smart. We weren't allowed to have maps hanging around our neck. And that was the point. She really made us believe in ourselves and our right to be in the landscape, regardless of who was staring, regardless of who was looking at. A group of Black and Asian women walking up Coniston Old Man, and everybody on the top just staring like, who is this coming? I mean, you could hear us before you could see us. And that experience really really led the way for me for claiming my space in the outdoors. It's not always easy. I mean, sometimes I do feel very visible. Usually I'm in my own bubble and in my own world. I don't even notice other humans. But yeah, so I owe a lot to Pammy Jo Hal. Shout out to you, Pammy, wherever you are.
She's been on the podcast. And she's still doing her stuff up there in Scotland with Backbone. What you've just described there is like key moments, almost like these jewels or beads that you can thread on that piece of string to create that necklace of like, this is my relationship with nature connection. It so resonates with me of like those key moments that stand out. And I think, you know, because we did grow up in concrete jungles and a lack of space. So I think when we got to that, those opportunities where we did have an expansive view or a bit more space, that they did stay with us. I mean, because key thoughts, we went to Great Yarmouth. We did. That's where we went to.
It was a bit posh, isn't it?
And it was rain. It was a lot of rain. It was. But I so relate with that. So thank you. What you do, you're saying about Pammy passing on that idea of right or claiming your space out there. And I think you're doing that now through words and language and through creativity, when you're marrying writing, language with nature workshops. Why are you doing this? What's the point? You know, like people ask this, you know, I mean, I know you do she howls, you know, on a Sunday night, you get together, the she howl gatherings, but that our true nature ones, say, as an example, they were specifically for Black and brown women or women of color. Why should you have these special places? These people ask.
Yeah, because we absolutely need our special safe places to explore our voices, to explore our true nature within ourselves and our relationship to nature outside. Particularly, it can be hostile when there's a group of Black and brown women outside exploring nature with their notebooks, taking notes, taking up space, blocking a path. We're very, very visible. We need to be together to be able to do that. And I think just the kind of stuff that Pammy did with us back in the late 90s and early noughties is really giving us that confidence and that self-belief that this space is for us. We can take up the space with our notebooks, with our writing in nature. Mm-hmm. And by doing it in a group, we're building that confidence to then go out and do it by ourselves. And we will experience microaggressions when we go out and do it by ourselves. But if we know that we belong there, that this is our right, that we're doing something really important and really valuable, and it goes back to what you were saying about a cop thing as well, that for me, doing the Our True Nature workshops and working being in nature with words, it's really deepening our relationship to nature, and it really fosters that sense of protection and that custodianship for nature, just making us, for me, this is my own process, it's just made me so much more aware of the changes in the landscape and what's happening in the environment, just that kind of nurturing and care and responsibility for the creatures and for the plants. And we need that for ourselves. So I suppose that's part of one of my kind of missions with the nature writing, is to bring our voices along, to be that sense of protection, because it is in our ancestry. And also I think with the Extinction Rebellion, who've been doing remarkable work, you know, I don't want to put myself on the front line and risk of being arrested, because I will quite possibly be treated differently. I have a lot to lose if I'm arrested, which is, you know, I applaud the other people, white people who may be retired or older and say, well, I haven't got much to lose, I'm still going to have my pension or whatever. I know it's not exclusively that group, but certainly that's some of the conversations I've had with some older people, part of Extinction Rebellion. So there's many ways to rebel and there's many ways to activate. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, I think just being in nature, I just want people to experience that deepening relationship with nature. And when we write about it and we write in it, it's reciprocal. I've just found, like, I mean, I don't know if it's because they've seen me with pen or paper, but I just find that curlews and hares come closer to me. It's that, you know, being in nature, being still, being quiet, observing. Well, they come and, you know, these creatures, I mean, it might be quite human-centric, me saying this, but I think the creatures then pop out and they're exploring us. And I think they remember us and recognize, and that healing power and joy. And I want to just share that. I want to just share that with as many people as possible, as many women as possible. It's really important to have those spaces for Black and brown women where we can just totally relax and being ourselves and not feel censored at all, or feel that we might be treading on somebody's toes by saying how we feel or something like that. It's really important. I know that there is, you know, some people, groups are not, what am I trying to say? I'm just thinking of a recent group that's set up in Sheffield for people of colour and walking, and there was quite a backlash from other groups feeling that they were being perceived as not being inclusive, and it's not about that. It's not about that at all.
Yeah.
It's not about, we're not saying that you're not inclusive, it's just that we need our special places.
Safe spaces together, but then also I feel when I'm by myself, solitude, and you're saying about these creatures coming out when you're sitting still and just observing. It happened to me with a heron when I was up on the Isle of Arran, and I saw it as, you know, as a gift, but also it was, I felt, I'm saying it's a he. I wasn't sure if it's a he, but he was teaching me about stillness and about patience.
Yeah.
And that was wisdom that I got from the visual of him. And I could be, you know, humanizing him, putting stuff on him, but that was the feeling I got from being in company or communion with him. Yeah. So I totally get that. And that he's probably going to appear in my essay that I'm creating for the Intrinsic anthology, which was like from Creative Countryside, Eleanor Cheatham, shout out there. Like, but what was so good about that when she released the list about 12 original writers that are producing stuff for this anthology was that there was Black and brown women on there. It's Jackie Holder's on there, and she's been on the podcast. So what I want to ask you, and this is probably the final thing, because this is like going into the future. You know, this episode is part of the Future Landscapes program from Northumberland National Park, and we're in there to diversify the voices that are talking about the changing landscapes and the future of the landscapes, and how we're contributing is not just through our voices, but through our creativity and our writing. So the first thing is like, what's your essay about for Intrinsic? Are you going to tell? And secondly, you got Developing Your Creative Practice Grant Award from Arts Council England. Yay, congratulations. And I'm thinking it might be a memoir that you're creating. So that would be nice to hear. No, you don't have to give away secrets, but like, I'm thinking this is your future endeavors.
I've had to take notes of what you said.
Off on tips, man. I go off on tips. I'm sorry, but it's like, I get so excited. You know? Like...
Oh no, I love it. Just keep on being really excited. I just want to say, you just made me realise I was born on Northumberland Road, and I lived there till I was 15. So that's my connection to Northumberland.
Yay!
Yeah, continuous connection. I thought I'd throw that in.
Thank you.
So my essay on Intrinsic for the Intrinsic anthology, great to be alongside you, Sheree, for that, is, what is my essay?
Have you been writing it, hon? Because, you know, the deadline's coming up.
I know the deadline's coming up. I have started writing. Oh, it's on, I remembered now. It is about Bardsey and about my map journal and kind of like my mashup style of writing. So it's about therapeutic writing, nature, Bardsey, putting a dollop of grief in there as well. Yeah, it's not quite shaped.
Yes, I'm with you on that. Mine's we're doing this with our hands as if people can see us while we're talking, but it's like it's a nebulous mash of things at the moment.
Exactly, a constellation. Yeah, it's like the Milky Way. It's a big smudge with some sparkles in.
Dazzle.
I don't write I don't know about you, but when I write, I don't really write I don't have a structured plan. I just kind of start, which a lot of writers say is you know, you need a structure, you need a plan. Anyway, so that's the Intrinsic chapter, and I'm really excited about writing that, and really excited to be writing about Bardsey, about Bardsey experience. There's so many magical things there. The developing your creative practice, oh my God, I'm just so thrilled that I'm getting funded for mentoring and time to write. And yes, it is. It's a memoir about my mom and about my relationship with my mom. And it's kind of a bit like a living process, because I'm doing a lot of thinking and writing, and I'm working with a mentor who's from a therapeutic writing background, and also a therapist, works from Black feminist perspectives. So I'm just really rethinking stuff around my mom's relationship, and it's really for me, it's been a mind-blowing process. But also, my mum was a force of nature herself, and I had a difficult relationship with her, and but there was a huge amount of love, and hugely similar, as I'm finding out more and more as I write about her. So it will be, yes, again, I'm just writing around the edges. I'll start the deeper writing and deeper research and in mid-November, and we'll see where that goes. There'll be some poetry in there, essay. It will cover migration and race and grief. You know, losing a mom is very different to losing a dad. Losing a dad is it was, you know, massive thing in it, a huge thing. I always thought I'd write about my dad. Then my mum went. Maybe it was grief and a grief reaction. I wrote 2 pieces of writing that went on to get shortlisted for a couple of prizes, and people really resonated with what I was writing about my mum and her story, and also, you know, and nature in relation to that. So yeah, so that's what's happening. I'll be working almost exclusively on that for the next 6 to 9 months. I'm trying to say no to things.
You have to protect your time and protect your headspace, but also protect your energy, because what you're doing is really, really, really important work. Not, you know, it is really important for yourself, but it's also when this work is shared with others, it will have a really profound effect on them, you know. So, you know, you're doing the work, and you're doing the hard work, and you should protect your time. So I'm really pleased that we got in this before you go diving into the words and the wildness of it in mid-November and beyond. So thank you so much for your time and your energy and contribution, because it's been rich, man. It's been rich. But, you know, what you were saying about, again, you know, here I am going off again, but that memoir, that we're saying it's a memoir, but it's mixed with all these different genres, angles and themes. And I just want to know, because mine is mixed. It is mixed. And I just want to know if it's because we're searching for that way or language or means to express such a diverse mixedness. The usual linear genre, stay in your lane writing just doesn't cover it. And I think this comes out for you also, because you create words, you create language, don't you?
I like to play around with language a lot, and do different things with language and punctuation and grammar. I mean, so often it might mean that nobody knows what I'm on about. But, you know, I don't care, because I think, and I really encourage this in with all the women who work with me. I do. I really like to play with language, play with words, shift it around, because language is evolving. It's not static. We can do whatever we want to do with it. It's elastic, and that language might be, you know, it is hybrid language, because we're bringing in our own stuff, and bringing some of my own, putting little, you know, the little bit of Punjabi that I've got, bringing in a bit of that, mashing it all up. And image is part of that, poetry is part of that, just mixing it all together. But I think when we can create that multi-layered story and put in a bit of a visual element as well, perhaps accessing more readers in that sort of way. But also, it's kind of, you're bypassing that rational cognitive mind, you go straight to the soul. You know, people seeing an image, it's like poetry does that as well, doesn't it? You'll know a lot more about that than I will, but I think we brown Black women are really pushing form, really pushing language, really stretching the possibilities for how stories are told. They don't have to be in that linear narrative arc. They can be a constellation or a tree, or, you know, taking our shape and inspiration from something else. Totally. Because we're not linear beings, are we?
No.
Time is a construct.
I was just to say, it's a construct, man. It's a construct.
Yeah.
And it's finding those ways to work outside of the rules, because, you know, they weren't ever set up in our favor anyhow. So, you know, stuff them.
I think the story has to come first. The story has to, you know, that it has to take its own shape. And then, you know, if it needs tweaking, whatever. But I do think there's, you know, publishers and others are more open to things that are different shapes and different voices. And, you know, if they want to get more representation and more authors from diverse backgrounds, then they have to expand their notions of what diverse storytelling looks like.
Yeah.
How it can be.
Yeah, totally agree. And on that note, I say thank you so much, Dal, for your time and contribution. It's been lovely speaking with you. This conversation is like, you know, it goes out to listeners, but I just felt like we were just talking with ourselves, really. And those are the best conversations, I think, because I do think you were yourself and you shone. So thank you, Kai.
Thank you very much, Sheree, for having me and for this beautiful work that you're bringing to the world. Thank you.
You too, and you too.